What's up, guys? Conviction 454 here. First thing I want to say is I apologize if the audio isn't as good as it usually is. I'm using a different headset than I normally do. But in this video, I really just wanted to talk about quite a bit. For those of you who have been following my channel for a little while, you know that I work in the IT industry. Um, and it's been 5 years now since I joined the IT industry right after college, and quite a bit has happened. And there's a lot of controversy right now about, the industry being overly saturated and a lot of college graduates coming straight out of college and not even being able to find a help desk job or just a job in general. I kind of just wanted to talk about those things while also kind of talking about my experiences working in IT as well as honestly, I want to talk about and I want to talk about all the good and the bad because there's definitely been a lot of bad, but a lot of it has been self-inflicted. So I kind of just wanted to, go over that, and hopefully anybody who watches this video can just, take this video and learn something from it. And so I guess we could start from all the way when I was still in college, probably like my senior year of college. I wasn't necessarily looking for jobs just yet. I was trying to figure out, what would be the ideal route for me to take right out of college. I was still living with my parents, of course, which that's an entirely different story for a different day. Um, Basically, I hated living with my parents once I got past the age of really 13 and 14. But yeah, I don't want to dig too deep into that. So yeah, I was still in college. I remember taking my last few courses in IT, um, various different courses related to cybersecurity and networking and stuff like that. And then once I graduated, this was in 2020, so this was literally right at the beginning of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. At the time, I wasn't really too worried about it, mainly because I wasn't really getting too deep into stuff like that. I was just focused on really one thing. I wanted to get a job, and I really wanted to move out of my parents' place. Um, Now, this may come as a surprise to you, but it really did not take me a long time at all after college to find a job. I understand that a lot of you may not be able to relate to that, but I think having a degree certainly helped. So if any of you are having any doubts as to whether or not a college degree may be able to help you get into IT, personally, from my experience, all I can tell you is that a degree helped me. I actually had a degree and no certification, so I didn't have the CompTIA A plus. I didn't have the CompTIA Network Plus, Security Plus, CCNA. I didn't have anything like that. Just had my degree, and so I landed my first help desk job in 20 because I graduated in December of 2020, and I think I got my first help desk job in maybe I want to say February or March of 2021, so not that long. Of course, I did have to apply to probably about 50 to 100 jobs. Well, I'm not telling the full truth. The job I was getting ready to tell you guys about wasn't my first IT job. It was like my first corporate IT job. I did kind of work like a technical support IT help desk sort of role. Really, not even 5, 6 months out of college. So it really didn't take me long to really get my feet wet in the industry. Either way, the reason why I didn't want to bring that role up at first is because I absolutely hated it, but I guess I'll talk about it anyway. So my first technical IT job was working for Carter's retail store that sells baby clothes. I'm not sure if you guys really have heard of Carter's and what or not, but yeah, essentially I worked fully remote as a contractor working on their IT help desk. It really wasn't much of an IT role. Um, I did, your traditional help desk call center. It's fully remote. So, I mean, how else are you going to do IT work, right? So, essentially, the only thing that I ever really touched that was IT related was POS systems and like troubleshooting email passwords. And really, that was the entire job. So, obviously, that grew to be very boring very quickly. Um, and it was only paying me like $17 an hour, which at the time was good. You know, for somebody coming straight out of college at that time, that wasn't necessarily bad, especially when you're living on your parents' roof. So, I mean, it was experience. So I worked there for about 7, 8 months before I decided, you know what, I don't like it here anymore. Um, but the thing about it is that I didn't quit. I ended up being let go because of my, hate to admit it, but poor work ethic towards the end. And so I recommend that you don't put yourself in that situation where you're burning bridges and you're not working hard and you're really setting a bad example for yourself, because you never know when you could use somebody as a reference or something like that, or like if you have a termination on your, like your background check, if something like that comes up later on down the road, then that's never a good thing. But that's the beginning of all of the bad that really has happened to me over the past 5 years working in tech. So my next role was a very similar role, working for Amtrak as a contractor, worked on their service desk. Very similar, um, really some of the same work. I ended up quitting that job after a few months. So as you can see, this is already starting to sound really bad. Uh, yeah, two jobs straight out of college and you couldn't keep either one for a year. I know, but trust me, it actually gets worse. So now I'm actually gonna talk about the role that I originally was going to talk about or start off with, that I technically count as like my first real IT job. So some of you, you've been following me for a little while, so you may have heard me talk about my first real help desk job working for Venture Employer Services. Um, it was an interesting role because, like I said, it was my first time working in a corporate environment. It felt like I was finally like a professional right out of college. Like I had my own cubicle. Um, it's just it was an uncomfortable feeling at first because I never really worked in like a professional environment like that. It was so interesting. Um, at first, for the first, I don't even remember how long I worked there. It wasn't long, but at first it was great. I mean, I learned how to image a laptop. I learned how to like work with Active Directory a little bit. I've worked a little bit with setting up voice over IP phones, a very tier one esque sort of stuff. Um, and it was okay for a while, but then I there were a few things that I did that my boss didn't like. So it got to the point where things started to get a little bit stagnant again, and I was on my phone a lot. That was a consistent problem for me, and my boss obviously really did not like that. And then I also did something else really stupid. I think there was some sort of project that I was supposed to work on, and I needed an extension cord. And so I went over to this empty cubicle, right? And I took the extension cord from underneath like the desk. Um, and there was a computer that looked like it was turned off, but it actually wasn't turned on. I probably should have checked to see if it was turned off or not, or if it was being used. But turns out somebody was like RDPing into that machine remotely. And when I unplugged the extension cord, obviously I turned the computer off as well. And so I didn't realize what I was doing until I did. And the reason why I pulled the extension cord, because I couldn't find any like unused ones. And so I'm like, okay, it looks like this one isn't being used. So I unplugged it. And imagine trying to explain that to your boss, and then he comes to complain to you about, an end user can't access their machine remotely that they use for their critical business functionality. And then you have to tell them that you unplugged it. Let's just say I was fired the next day. So yeah, between the issues with the phone and the issues with the extension cord, I was like, yeah, I can't even really be like upset with that. I made a stupid decision, and it cost me. Um, but trust me, it doesn't end there. There's been a lot of bad that has taken place in my career in just 5 years. Um, with that has come with a lot of lost jobs, either being terminated or quitting. Anyways, my next job, I had it for a month. I worked for an MSP for the first time ever. MSPs to this day, in my opinion, are some of the worst. I mean, well, I'm very mixed on MSPs because you can learn a lot from MSPs. Like you can go into an MSP, work your ass off for like about 6 months to a year, learn so much. You might actually be ready for like a sysadmin role or something like that. You'll touch so much, but the problem is I was there for a month. But that's not the only MSP I worked for. And the reason why I got let go from that job is because I actually ended up wiping out a client's entire Exchange infrastructure, Exchange server through clicking a button. And to this day, I don't know the exact details of what I did. I do remember clicking something, but apparently I messed everything up for a client and was fired. So as you can see, this was really I don't know if yeah, I'll say it was the turning point for me because obviously I was very, very frustrated. I was starting to like I think my mental health was starting to decline a little bit because I was like, you know, I just came out of college. I'm just trying to keep an IT job. And so I just told you about 4 jobs now that I lost already. And just, I think at that point it had been either just under 2 years or right at the 2 year mark, something like that. Um, but yeah, I think there was a lot to learn from that experience. But believe it or not, it doesn't end there. Things did get better from here, but there's still a lot of bad that came out of this. So the next company I worked for was called One Digital Health and Benefits. I stayed there for a year. Again, help desk, it was a mix of tier 1 and tier 2 support. I had a great team there. All my teammates they were like brothers to me. I didn't necessarily like my manager very much. I tried to show a little bit of stoicism, just kind of block out some of the stuff that she would say sometimes. And then my director he was mixed. But in terms of what I learned there and in terms of the changes and adjustments that I made to actually keep the role, I felt like I was actually doing well. And this was also at the time when I I had just moved out of my parents' place. I was so comfortable working at One Digital that I was finally ready to say, okay, I'm financially stable now, even though it had only been a year that I worked there. Moved straight out. I'm paying my own rent, paying my own bills, and it has been a little over 2 years now since that happened. And things have really been going mostly okay. Um, After a year though, I decided to leave because it was starting to get a little bit too stagnant for me, and I was really trying to move up. I get it though. I wasn't necessarily in a position where I can really afford to talk about moving up when you haven't even really been at a company for um a year yet. And so at the time, the only certification that I had was my A plus. And I got my A plus when I was still working for Venture, I believe. Yeah. Um, and it helped. I mean, it definitely helped with getting like newer help desk jobs. Um, but yeah, moving forward, the next job that I had after that, I worked for this real estate company. I'll tell you, this was almost the breaking point for me entirely. I spent 2 weeks working for this real estate company as what they call an IT coordinator. 2 weeks. Um, I came in. I don't. This one's hard because I really felt like I didn't do anything to jeopardize my position. Because after losing that real estate job, IT job, that was at the point where I started talking with my dad and my mom and my family and my friends about mental health because I remember coming home on the day that I got fired and punching a hole in like my closet door, and I was just so furious and frustrated at that point because I mean, obviously, when you lose so many jobs, it's tough, and you get really sick of it after a while. And so I almost thought about giving up and just dropping IT altogether. I don't know if it's because I'm just a shitty person or if I'm just, you know, not smart enough, whatever it was, but I really, no, I don't think I think I was at the point where I entertained the idea of giving up. I'm not somebody that gives up very easy. I can actually be very stubborn. Um, but it got to the point where I was just really, really frustrated. And so I hope for anybody that watches this, you'll probably never experience this sort of situation. And so I'm telling you from my failures that if I can, persevere and keep working into this field and keep learning and keep growing, then you absolutely can. Because there's no way in hell somebody can say this is normal. And I understand that. I've been trying to acknowledge my flaws for years now, thinking about it every single day, just trying to get better. Um, but anyways, I really don't even want to talk about the next role like that because it's so insignificant. But yeah, there was another MSP I worked for, but I technically wasn't working directly with the team of MSP engineers. I was working as like a dedicated IT guy for one of their biggest clients. Um, had issues with the manager there, and the company ended up going bankrupt anyway. So I won't talk too much about them. The next role after that is a role that I will.
All right, sorry guys. Bit of a software issue again. But yeah, I ended up switching headsets and the background. So as you can see, I've definitely had some problems. But anyways, for the next role, um, like I said, for this role in particular, it's definitely one that I'm probably going to remember for the rest of my life. In terms of how long I stayed there, it was a year. I worked for an MSP called Cortelligent. I think it's a pretty popular MSP around the United States. Um, Now, this was definitely where things really started to get rolling in terms of my responsibility and in terms of what sorts of tech I was touching. This is really the bona fide MSP experience that I've gained so far. Um, so I got hired as a remote support engineer. Um, I I was just a regular help desk guy, really. Fully remote. I probably worked with about, I don't know, anywhere between maybe 5 and 10 clients on any given day. Um, and for the first 5, 6 months, it went well, but then there was a bunch of different changes in management. There was a high turnover rate, so I started to see people come and go. And then with the change in management, also became a huge change in responsibility for me. So just to add some context, Cortelligent has three different types of engineers, they call them. So they have remote support, then they have systems engineers, and then they have what you would call IAM engineers. All of them have their different responsibilities and whatnot. Um, and I was a part of all three teams, and so my responsibilities became a lot less, I guess, standardized or I guess predictable. And so with that came a lot of frustrations, especially after having, a fairly smooth experience from, coming in, being trained, and then, kind of having the process and everything down. And this is actually where my hatred for MSP started to come to, is because I know my experience is probably a bit more on the unique side, but when you have to deal with several different clients, you have to deal with KPIs, you have to deal with SLAs, you have to deal with ticket response times, you have to deal with, for us in particular, we had reports every week talking about, okay, this is how many tickets you've worked on, this is how long you were on the phone, this is essentially how you did everything at every minute, and, billable time, stuff like that. Essentially, you're being micromanaged to the absolute core. Like there's nothing that you could do that's unwatched. I mean, it wasn't really a privacy concern necessarily. It was more so like I hate being, measured for literally everything I do on a daily basis. And it got to the point where, okay, you know what? Now I'm getting sick of doing help desk. It got to the point where I started pursuing like my Network Plus Security Plus, at AZ900, CCNA, whatever I could do to start getting ahead and try to get away from health. This is where the fire really started to burn in my stomach, per se. And with that fire came a burning desire to just make things better for myself. I got tired of the same stuff. I got tired of things not working for me anymore. And so I started to become extremely rebellious at work. I started telling my boss, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that anymore. Like I literally basically gave him the middle finger. I just told him, look, man, I'm again, it could have been a bit of, mental health decline as well. I have to admit that I've never been to a therapy session or anything like that, but something just clicked inside my brain ever since that day. We're talking about, we're talking about last year. Actually, no, I think we're talking about, oh God, I'm losing track of time. Yeah, February of last year. There it is. I don't know why it took me that long to remember. But ever since February of last year, I have been working diligently, extremely hard to move up in my career. And so uh, just, yeah, with Cortelligent, I ended up, being let go in March for essentially just saying F you. Like, I'm tired of this. And so, I decided to change my way of doing things. And so while I was at Cortelligent, I did get my Network Plus, Security Plus. I was congratulated for that from my boss. I tried to talk with him about potentially moving up, getting promoted. He basically gave me the middle finger, and that was that. So, anyways, for the next company that I worked for, and this is the company that I still work for, but only for a little while longer, is actually not really help desk at all. It's a data center. I work at a data center overnight. No end users to interact with, no teammates to really interact with. Just me, the infrastructure. It's quiet all night, and I love that. I can watch TV. I can study for certifications. I can essentially do what I want, really. And it's been really the most peaceful job I've ever had. And so making that decision, oh, of course, it's for less pay, of course. And speaking of which, in terms of pay, I know I haven't talked about that a lot. When I was with Venture, I was making like 21 an hour. One Digital like 24 an hour. Cortelligent was 60K actually, but I really had to negotiate for that. My pay always went up. But with Max Stadium, it went back to like that. Um, oh, actually, I think it would be yeah, I make 50K there, so um, not really a lot of money. It's just barely enough to pay bills, really, but it does pay bills and it's peaceful. But I won't be here much longer. So, but yeah, it's there's not really a whole lot that goes on at the data center. I mean, um, like I said, they're complete Apple environments, and they actually have nothing but Mac Minis inside the data center. And so, if customers have issues with their Mac Minis, I'll troubleshoot that. We do have some HP Blade servers here and there that I may deconstruct and decom, or maybe even reprovision them, something like that. Uh, I crimp Ethernet cables, things of that nature. Um, and also I never actually really talked about my responsibilities with Core Intelligence. So that's really where I started to touch a lot of different technical components. Beyond just AD and Office 365 and things like that, I really started to touch like virtual and physical, well, not physical server, but virtual servers, working with ESXi, working with Linux a little bit, working with Cisco equipment, working with firewalls, just a lot of different components. But I'll get to the more technical side of it all towards the end of the video. But anyways, Max Stadium is a great company. But in terms of my work history, I'm actually getting to the point of where I am now. So I know I said I'm working with Cortelligent, but I actually, while I've been with Max Stadium, I got two certs. My AZ900, which is just a fundamentals Azure cert, and then the CCNA. I got that, and the CCNA I feel like that's really a big part of the reason why my career is about to take a massive turn, because I just got hired 2 days ago as a sysadmin, a junior system administrator, and I can't tell you how excited I am for this role because I have spent countless hours. I spend at least 5 days a week studying just various different technologies. Since February of last year, I've looked at ESXi, I've looked at Linux, I've looked at SQL, I've looked at Kubernetes a little bit. Of course, there's still other certifications I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get my CYSA plus. Of course, I was studying for the CCNA at the time. That took months. I'm studying to get my AZ 104. I'm studying to get my AZ 500. Um, I've been studying like some Exchange server concepts. What else have I been studying? A lot of different stuff. I can't even remember it all. A Windows Server. I have hands-on experience with Windows Server, but I started learning about like storage spaces, NFS shares, DNS DHCP, DFS replication, domain controller replication, group policy, just trying to absorb and learn as much as I can. And this goes back to what I said about that fire really coming from all of the failures, all of the setback, and just really wanting to move forward. And I wish I would have had that fire in me earlier in my career. And so I implore each of you, if you if you don't really want it, then it's going to be really hard to move forward, unless you just get the ball rolling in your first position and you kind of just, people really like you. I didn't really, obviously, people didn't really like me early in my career, but I know it's more than that. I'm not even sure if I really liked myself. And I know that's a bit deep, but I think a lot of my failures as a tech so far have come from not loving myself enough to really put those hours in. And so I actually got a notification from Udemy just like a month ago saying that last year I spent a total of just under 10,000 minutes of course minutes on Udemy, learning, just watching videos. And then, of course, there's books that I read. Oh, I can't forget PowerShell. PowerShell is a skill that I'm trying to learn, but I have no programming background on. I'm absolutely terrible at it. I didn't pay attention to it in school. I wish I would have. Um, Another one of my failures, of course. So, um, but yeah, I've talked, like I said, I'm really excited for this junior admin role, and I honestly can't believe that I'm here after 5 years. I really feel like stepping into this admin role is really going to change the trajectory of my career. I really do hope that it works out. But anyways, now that I've talked about my career up to this point, I just want to, just give some tips, just some general advice from somebody who came into the field at an awkward time and is still in the field today. And I just want to, kind of just talk to you guys who are trying to get into the field. So, like I said, you gotta have a passion for it. I know some people may disagree. You don't necessarily have to be passionate to get into IT, and to an extent, I do agree. I do think that it is tougher now to get into IT than it's ever been. Maybe I'm wrong about that too. If I actually just saw like in terms of like the saturation theory or whatever, turns out the market has kind of always been this way. Um, I watched a video from IT Career Questions on YouTube. He personally, well, they personally think that the market actually isn't all that bad in the grand scheme of things. It's actually very similar to how it's been over several years, but I haven't done a lot of research on that. Um, but obviously, what I'm gonna say next is pretty cliche. Just don't give up. There are absolutely jobs out there for you if you have to, be a little bit more flexible and get out. You know, make a LinkedIn profile, utilize your network, work on some home projects. Speaking of home projects, I recommend for somebody who's really trying to get into IT, learn about virtualization and configure a Windows Server Lab. It is extremely easy to do. I have done it. I was getting ready to say I've done it a million times, but obviously that would be an exaggeration. I've done it numerous times. As a matter of fact, I actually have an old MacBook that I use. I have this virtualization software called UTM, or hypervisor is what it's called. And I have like a Windows Server environment, and that's probably about the fourth time that I've ever set one up from scratch. Um, And I've been doing stuff like configuring pretty much every Windows Server feature there is, but I'm trying to learn how to do it through PowerShell. And so I've been doing one-liners so far, but I'm trying to dig deeper into that. I'm trying to learn how to actually script because I'll admit programming is probably my weakest part of IT, even though it really falls more with computer science. But at the end of the day, scripting, programming stuff, it has space in IT. Um, but I mean, I am absolutely terrible at it. But I'm willing to get outside my comfort zone finally and try my best to learn an advanced skill so that I can ultimately become the best tech, specifically sysadmin now that I can be. And so it really comes down to how motivated you are and what you're willing to do. And I really think it comes down to being willing to do what others are not willing to do. If you're just going to, go to your job, 8 to 5 job, do the very minimum that you can at your job, and then just leave every day without putting in extra work, you are going to have a tough time moving up in this field. That's a hard lesson that I personally had to learn. You have to put in the hours, you have to put in the time. When I was working at Cortelligent, I got like a report saying that I was literally outworking everybody after hours in terms of like upskilling. And I'll have conversations with some of my coworkers, and they'll always tell me, "Oh, I'm so tired after work. I don't want to do this," or they'll come up with any excuse that they can. And I'm like, "Look, I'm done with excuses. You don't know how many times I failed. You don't know what's going on in my head right now. You just don't understand what I've been through. And I would hope that nobody ever understands where I went through by losing. I lost count. What was it? 7 jobs that I told you guys about? That type of crap right there will ruin you. It'll change you. It'll make you question your sanity sometimes. And like I said, I don't that's not normal. And so I hope that you could take my story and to say to yourself, well, if this clown was able to, move up into in his career, that I certainly can at the very least take that initiative, get into tech, and then actually see if I can build up to a point where, I could become a sysadmin in half the time this guy did. Like I absolutely believe that anybody who watches this video who wants to get into IT can do far better than me in terms of how I, got started and where I am now. Really, if I would have just taken more initiative at a younger age, I probably could have became a sysadmin or something like that much sooner than I did, but I didn't. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that sort of hardship. But at the same time, if you don't have to go through it, they don't go through it. So don't lose hope. I get it may be really frustrating. You may have to submit hundreds of thousands of applications sometimes. And sometimes if it's a financial thing, I've worked multiple jobs before. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to work 2 jobs now. I'm not leaving Mac Stadium, man. I'm actually going to work this system admin job, and then I'm also going to, keep working with Mac Stadium as well, to improve my finances and whatnot. So sometimes, if you, um, a lot of times it's fine, it's financial based. So a lot of people come into IT saying, "Oh, I really want to make a lot of money," but that's not really the mindset that you want to have. I mean, obviously finances are important, but if you really want to sustain a career in IT, you have to find some reason outside, "Oh, I want to make 50, 60, 70, six-figure salary, whatever." Um, but yeah, that's some of the advice that I would offer. Um, I would say the biggest piece of advice of all is just please just try to don't do what I did, don't burn bridges, learn how to be a good communicator, make connections with people, don't be an ass like I am, because I can most certainly tell you that I am probably not the most pleasant person. A lot of people actually think I'm cool though. But what I've come to see is that it's usually the people that work above me, like my bosses, that don't like me because I can be very rebellious and I can be, that guy to do stuff that other people wouldn't. Um, I just I don't take orders very well sometimes, or I would even say most of the time. If I don't, the way that I think is if you're telling me about a system, right, like any sort of like systemized approach or methodology, and then I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is too long, this doesn't make sense. I'm very critical. You know, if something doesn't click with me, I'm like, I'm gonna say it. It's like, why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing it that way? And then sometimes I tend to, well, I need to stop saying sometimes. I am an independent thinker and I like to do things my own way. That's just how I am. At this point, I feel like because I've lost so many jobs at this point that I'm honestly a bit indifferent when it comes to working with these companies because it's like I've been there, done that, and I've come back every single time from it. And so there's some confidence that comes with that, but there's also some regret a little bit, I'll admit. But I don't really think about the past too much. I try to think about, okay, what can I do today to make myself better, you know? Um, but I don't dwell on the past too much. And I really don't think about the future too much either. I like to stay in the present moment and focus on what I can do today to succeed at something or just, achieve some sort of goal. And so I can't necessarily sit here and say that everybody should think that way, but I do think it helps when you're actually trying to, move up in IT. It's a great field. There's plenty of intelligent, skilled people in this field, and I suggest that when you get the opportunity to be around people who know more than you, please listen to them. Please soak up as much as you can from them and try to, even if things do frustrate you, even if you don't agree with things, just try to understand different perspectives. And again, I will emphasize this a million times over if I have to. Please just don't be immature like I was starting off, and probably still a little bit immature now, to be honest, a little bit more mature. I could definitely see that. Obviously, for what I've told you thus far, I was working at companies for literal months. But lately, the last few companies, I was able to last at least a year. So there's that growth there. And I'm hoping with this sysadmin role that I can actually stay here for a good while and build from that and eventually maybe get into cybersecurity. But I'm not worried about that too much. I'm just worried about doing what I can today to be the best sysadmin that I can be, particularly a junior admin. I'm not like a bona fide sysadmin yet, but I will be working with the senior admins a lot on various projects. So I'm looking forward to it. So I guess to summarize it all, definitely pursue your certs. Definitely be a mature person. Definitely just be cognizant of how you come off to people. That's something that's kind of difficult for me, to be honest, but it's something that I have gotten better at. Try to find a good team, try to find a good company to work for. Um, Try to find that fire, that motivation in you that says, this is why I do what I do every day. Because as soon as you find them, I promise you, you will be unstoppable. Like nobody can tell me right now that I can't learn a skill. Nobody can't tell me that I can't pass a test. Nobody can't tell me that I can't work at IT because I may have been knocked down so many times at this point, but I always come back and I always manage to persevere. And if I can do it, then I know I really think anybody else can do it. I I mean, obviously there may be some other factors that may stop somebody from being able to, but like I said, I think my case is probably one of the strangest cases you're going to hear on YouTube. Uh, and I laugh, but I'm sure a lot of you are just absolutely like just cringing right now, saying like, "What is this guy talking about? Like, is he crazy? Is he like, is there something wrong with him?" And maybe there is, but but anyways, I think that's gonna be the end of this video. Like I said, I'm really stoked about being a sysadmin. And I really take pride in being able to help, hopefully at least one person, stay motivated and get into this field and realize that getting in should be the hardest part. And because I can't say for me, getting in was the easiest part. Staying in and all the failures that I went through, that was the hard part. And so I think there may be a little bit more comfort for some of you out there in knowing that, just because you get in doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy to stay in, and that, there's somebody out there that you can't be too much worse than, because, most people don't just lose that many jobs in 5 years. I've literally lost more jobs than I have years of experience in IT, and it's disappointing, um but anyways, I think I've been going on long enough in this video. So if there's any questions or concerns, like maybe any more suggestions on like different like technical components or like projects that you can work on, or different sources or something like that. Like if you need help getting a cert or something like that, I've uploaded a few videos on how I got like my Security Plus, CCNA A Plus, Network Plus. Um, but yeah, I'm always willing to help. Time constraints considering everything. But I mean, I think that's pretty much gonna be it for this video. I really appreciate you guys for listening to me for over half an hour, I believe, at this point. And yeah, so I'm gonna let you guys go now. But again, thank you for watching. And good luck for any college graduates who are just trying to get into the field. You can make it. I know you can make it. Um, and I know not only can you make it, but you can actually thrive in IT as long as you have that fire within you. But anyways, yeah, that's gonna be it for now. All right, peace.